Progressive Decoupling, a case study with PRI. And so this talk is about PRI's experiences decoupling and a bit of our story on the Drupal platform. This is a high-level talk and doesn't get too technical. And when writing this, I realized that this could probably contain 3 or 4 other talks. But so I'm just going to stick to the high level. But there will be additional resources if you want to go more in depth with some of the technical stuff we did. And I linked to those in here. And one other thing, the background of the design will get less intense as we go. Don't worry. All right. So there we go. So I'm Brandon. I'm the Director of Technical Product Management for PRI.org. I've been at PRI for just over 5 years and been in this role since the fall. And I've worn many hats at PRI. And I will always wear a lot of hats at PRI. We have a small team. So in addition to being the product owner of the team, I still do most of the design and UX work and do a lot of bug fixing and building new features. So, and outside of my work for PRI, I like to design civic-minded things that stand little chance of ever being implemented. Like, for example, a new state flag for the Minnesota. Okay? And a new Skyway map for Minneapolis. This got published in City Pages if you follow the link down at the bottom, the bit.ly link. So that's the first resource you should check out. All right. But back to it. So who here has heard the term decoupled Drupal before? Okay, a lot of you, yeah. And I'm sure because I think I first heard the term at DrupalCon Portland like 5 years ago. So it's been around for a while. But there's one blog post in particular in 2015 that Dries wrote entitled "The Future to a Decoupled Drupal," where he outlines several ways to approach decoupling, which is just a fancy word that refers to the process of migrating from a monolithic CMS, like Drupal 7, to an API-driven distributed architecture. So one of the concepts Dries outlined in this post was progressive decoupling, or moving certain components or pages of a site towards an API-driven architecture one piece at a time. And so at PRI, we have begun that process. This case study consists of 4 sections. The first will be, I'll introduce who PRI is, an abridged history of PRI on Drupal, and so basically so you can better understand how we reach the point of decoupling our website. Second, I'll explain what we've done to decouple thus far and review those tools we've used. Third, we will review the advantages and challenges we've discovered of working in a decoupled framework. And lastly, I will talk less, smile more, and attempt to answer your questions. All right, Hamilton. Yes. Okay. So PRI is or Public Radio International for long, is a global nonprofit media company focused on the intersection of journalism and engagement to affect positive change in people's lives. PRI's mission is to serve audiences as a distinct content source for information, insights, and cultural experiences essential to living in our diverse, interconnected world. Whew. All right. So that's our mission statement. So I think it's important to note that we are not NPR, PRX, APM, or NPR. They are our friendly competitors. Right? And so essentially we distribute public radio shows to public radio stations. Some of our shows are PRI's The World, Studio 360, The Takeaway. If you listen to NPR, you'll hear those shows. And we also distribute podcasts like Science of Happiness and Things That Go Boom. My personal favorite is LBJ's War. If you're a history buff, you'll probably enjoy that one. And we also run an editorial news-based website that features content from our programs and unique digital content. So here's the quick abridged history of PRI.org. I feel it's necessary for the context of the rest of this talk so you can understand how we reached the point of decoupling. So 5 years ago, we built a Drupal 7 website to create a revamped PRI.org around that editorial content. And for context, this is what the desktop version of the homepage looked like for about 5 years with that. And prior to moving to Drupal, PRI.org and theworld.org were two separate sites, and they had something like up to 100,000 visitors a month combined. And after we merged the two into a single D7 site, our traffic quickly grew to about 1 million uniques a month within a year, and up to 2 million in a couple of years. Our traffic peaked after the election of Trump, but then Facebook decided to stop fake news by shutting down all news on their platform. So we've been fairly stagnant since, and at about 1.5 million uniques coming from our Google search results. Anyway, and I should also add that we have roughly the same, if not more, traffic off of PRI.org than we do on the site. So the ability for us to quickly distribute our content is really important to us. And so due to this higher than expected traffic, we started to experience performance issues early on. Traffic spikes were exciting as our content was having an impact, but I dreaded the eventual crash. Have you ever had anything on your website go to the first page of Reddit? Neither did we for a while, because it always crashed before we got there. But I should say that, but we have made it to #1 on Reddit, and it's a lot. Anyway, okay, sensitive. And so server-wise, we weren't able to scale on our initial host, as we initially went the route, and I'm almost embarrassed to say this, of a physical server. And to make matters worse, we didn't have like safe deployment tools, and it's safe to say we're not on that host anymore. The process of adding content to the site was slow, and our editors have continually been frustrated by the editorial experience and frequent crashes during the admin rush hour when everybody is filing for the day's deadline. Also, we added new features that produce more performance problems. For example, I'll just point out we have like 50 to 60 RSS feeds built within views. Yeah. So we just have a lot of stuff in this, and the overall size of our database is about 6 gigs. Yeah. So it's an overworked D7 site. So therefore, we knew we needed to make some changes, and the decision was made organizationally to actually abandon Drupal entirely. We made the decision about a couple of years ago, and to go the route of building a custom publishing platform. The idea here was this would give us the utmost in flexibility and allow us to scale our servers on the Google Cloud Platform. So we migrated the D7 site over there so we can work on this platform. And the flexibility meant we could select tools in which we worked on with fewer dependencies. And during this process, we essentially ignored our Drupal 7 site and only did critical maintenance. And so the initial goal of that project was to build 3 things: an API, a publishing platform built on Angular, which was actually kind of fun to design there. That's a screenshot of it. And we also started to build a front end using PHP Twig for time reasons, and we eventually wanted to get that onto a React framework. However, many of you would probably not be surprised to learn that by the time we hit last fall in 2017, it was clear this custom platform wasn't going to be finished anytime soon. So I shouldn't go into the reasons why, but please trust me when I say it wasn't going well. It was messy, it was hard. If you've been a part of a project that's kind of crashed and burned, you kind of feel that, right? And ultimately it led to changes to our technical team, processes, and roles. And at this time, our leadership requested a technical audit from 4 Kitchens, who we worked with in the past on a few projects after we launched a D7 site, to analyze the custom platform and assess its viability. And 4 Kitchens concluded and confirmed many of our hunches that the custom platform was not a viable path forward. So we needed a new path forward, and 4 Kitchens provided us with a list of options that we could go with, which was making that platform viable and investing in it. Upgrading to Drupal 8 was something we talked about. Decoupling Drupal 7 site, or even not to decouple at all and just continuing on and just fix our performance issues and keep going with the Drupal 7 site. So, and I should also note that all these paths are on top of a recommended maintenance phase, which we did complete, and that's when we finally moved our site to Pantheon. We probably should have been from day one. All right. So with those options in place, we had a big decision to make on how to proceed. From a technical perspective, we reset our tech goals around the following: to be fast, to be stable, and to allow flexibility. In addition, our stakeholders wanted to be able to see tangible changes, which is fair considering we had gone almost 2 years without tangible progress on the website front. We didn't have the time to wait to throw a big switch. We had to take visible steps towards improvement. Therefore, we needed a quick win to help rebuild our team's credibility within our organization and simply just show some progress. We also had to be budget conscious. None of the expenses going forward were planned for our fiscal year budget. So after taking that all into account, we determined that decoupling Drupal 7 was the proper path forward, and adding the API and going the front end route there. So now I'll shift gears into what we've done since we've made this decision to progressively decouple. If you remember, we needed a quick win, and we found that win in choosing our homepage as the first piece for decoupling. The idea was this would start us down the path of decoupling through developing a RESTful API and React front end in order to implement a new and overall homepage for PRI.org. What this means is that right now, if you go to PRI.org and you visit the homepage, you'll be on a site that's served via proxy to our React front end. But as soon as you click a link from the homepage to another page, you'll be taken back to our Drupal 7 front end. And I'll admit, in some ways it feels really strange to have only decoupled a single page at this point, and especially a homepage, because any think piece you've read says like the homepage is dead, right? However, it gave us the catalyst to redesign and solve some much needed UX issues, and there are some other benefits to this decision as well. Like, for example, our homepage is only 5% of our traffic, so in some ways it mitigated the risk, allowing us to ensure that the technology worked as expected before following up with like our more critical story pages, which account for like 90% of our traffic. And it got us a quick win with stakeholders because there are some tangible, visible changes we made along with the API. We're also able to set up patterns and processes so we can continually develop this as we go. And it allowed us to stay within our budget, which again were unplanned expenses. So this is a screenshot from an early prototype of the homepage. We designed this in-house after doing some surveying of our audience and staff, and this is where we ended up. Most of what you see here actually made it to the final version with some tweaks. And you'll see it's responsive using CSS Grid. The navigation is much improved, and user engagement is much more of a priority. I could go on, but that's likely a different talk altogether. So we'll move on. All right. So the first step towards decoupling will always be setting up an API, especially if you don't have one. If you don't have one like we didn't. And so we worked with 4 Kitchens, and especially their wonderkin, Patrick Coffey, who led the effort to design and build a full-featured REST API into Drupal 7. So we use RESTful, which is a Drupal module, to create a JSON API-compliant API. We ended up creating read endpoints for all of our content types and taxonomies, and not just for the homepage. We also made significant progress on adding in CRUD endpoints to many of the content types for our eventual goal of hooking the Drupal-based API into the custom editorial application for our editors, which we're not quite ready to abandon yet. And so we had a pattern set up. As the API was rounding out, 4 Kitchens was also working on creating a robust and modern framework backed by the new API, not only to serve the homepage, but to set the patterns for allowing our in-house team to complete the rest of the front end. So to achieve that goal, we use React to create a component-based We use React to create component-based user interfaces and styled them using the CSS modules pattern. This work was done in a library of components in which we use Storybook to demonstrate and test the components. And you may be wondering why I have exclamation points here. Because it quickly became the favorite tool of the entire team as we worked on the project. And down below, you'll see I've added a couple links. The first one is to our actual live storybook. So if you want to take a look there, it'll redirect you to our GitHub page. And then the next one is a list of React lessons written by Evan, who was the developer on this, or the primary developer on this part, and he wrote a blog post for Kitchens on their blog. That'll take you there to where you can read more about the technical aspects of working on it. But one thing I want to point out is one of my favorite tools that this had is it had a really easy to install accessibility add-on. You kind of see the tabs sneaking in there, but what it does is it validates your HTML and notes issues like with things like even contrast colors. So, I mean, so what that tool allowed us to do was be accessible at even a basic level within a couple hours. And that included like peer reviews and stuff like that. So it was a really cool tool with a lot you can do with it. And then we pulled these components into a Next-based application, which communicates with the API, parses incoming data, and uses that data to populate component properties and generate full pages. Both the component library and the Next-based application use Jest and Enzyme use Jest and Enzyme heavily to create thorough, robust tests. And I believe 4 Kitchens also has a blog post on this as well if you poke around their blog. So, and one thing I'll note is this is really fast. And it'll get faster once we get the other front-end pages into it because we'll get additional caching benefits from that. So, so there, yeah. And so we were able to launch the new homepage in the API version 1.0 in late April this year. So it's only been a month or so that we've been on this framework. And we're already starting to see some advantages and also some challenges of working in a decoupled, or taking a progressively decoupled approach. So I'm going to start with the advantages. First, it works. The tech stack works. We are able to enter content into Drupal and spit it out into our React front end. So that's the goal. And it works. So it's also fast. Overall load time performance increased by 40%, with first byte time down to less than half a second. So, and a lot of this, and I see a few Pantheon people here, is thanks to Pantheon's edge caching that sits in front of our API. So, pretty cool. And I kind of alluded to this before, but we were able to mitigate risk by testing the tech stack against a portion of the website, not the whole thing, and against live traffic, because you never know how an API is going to perform once you get it into the wild. And it means we can slowly make changes over time, not having to flip a giant switch at some point in the future. And it gives us time to sort out, the caching issues. And it gave us time to even sort out caching issues, like when an editor makes a change to the curated homepage, so that the cache immediately clears when it goes and everything's working together and you get instant changes for the editors. Because if there's any delay when you're working with journalists, it's not tolerated. Because they got to fix that typo now, right? There's no patience. Even 5-minute lag, you can't do it. I've tried. All right. And another thing is, with our limited budget, it was important for us that we avoided a migration because migrations are hard and time consuming, and this allowed us to target our budget at the actual tech stack and not trying to, work on the D7 migrate module to get the content out or create methods and going in. It's we've done a few migrations into PRI.org in the meantime, and it's a lot of work. And it also sets up to better handle a migration to another platform in the future, like D8, when we need to go, because then we can just go from the API to API, right? So the flexibility we have is immense. And one thing here is, for the first time in the history of PRI.org, a developer who worked on our project said, "I really enjoyed working on your new tech stack." That was music to my ears, because it's been, anybody that had touched the site always had some sort of frustration. It was slow, it was hard to deal with, and so that's a positive. So kudos modern frameworks. And we were also able to satisfy stakeholders and our colleagues, and so we received a lot of positive feedback throughout the design process and even after it was implemented. So some of the challenges, the biggest one we've seen since the launch of this homepage is that it increased the number of applications and tech stacks that need to be supported. So it can eat away at our time, and the rest of the Drupal 7 front end is still there. We still have to support editors when they get occasional 503 errors, adding content and things like that. So, and we have a very small team, and I'll say, you know, there's one other developer on my team. So, and cost will be a challenge because for us it took a significant initial investment to get up and going from the point of not having an API and going forward. And it'll take a lot of, and it took a lot of time for our team. You know, I should say, it'll take a lot of time for our team to build out the rest of our roadmap, which includes things like microsites and a better audio experience and better editor tools and things like that. So we have a long list of endless roadmap. And I should point out, so when I first took the job at PRI and we built that Drupal 7 site, before it started, I'm like, oh, so we're gonna build this website and then I'm just gonna redesign it every year because I'm gonna have nothing better to do. That was a lie. That is not true. As you can see, I've only redesigned the website one time in 5 years, not once every year. Anyway, that's a side point. And another thing is, when you decouple like this, you also see additional server costs. Because at this point, Pantheon doesn't have container-based hosting, although I know it's a high feature request. So, but fortunately, containers are pretty cheap. So our homepage is sitting on a Zeit container, and it's $15 a month. But that's added on top of our cost with Pantheon. We also have all of our files on an AWS bucket. We have another CDN for our audio files. And there's a few other servers we have running some special portions of our site. So it all adds up over time. And then another thing is there's a learning curve with using new tech stacks. And one of the things here is even for kitchens was new to a lot of these tools that we built. It was their first time using Storybook or a Next front end. But I think we overcame the learning curves pretty quickly. But every tool has a different level of comfort that you have, and depending on your team. So that's something to consider. And prioritization is a challenge. And it probably goes without saying, but determining what needs to be decoupled when can be a challenge. You have stakeholders and you have an audience, you have a lot of goals within your organization, so you have to really plan out what you do when and take the time on building. And so, there you go. All right, so I actually finished this a lot faster than I thought I would. But that's okay because we're running up to the lunch hour. So, if you have any, so I hope this will help you. We got ourselves into a really big tech hole. We're slowly digging out of that hole. I think we're in a much better spot than we were in the fall, for instance. But I'd be happy to hear your questions, and we can go from there. And, real quick, here's a list of references. I'll leave them up here for that. My Twitter handle. Anyway, yeah, I see one up back there.
Yeah, I'm curious how you're planning to handle editors who may want to preview their content before they publish it when you start moving to that decoupled process.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, right now, we don't have our homepage set up to preview. But I imagine once we build out the rest of the front end, we're going to put the Drupal 7 site behind an admin domain. And then I will strip out Drupal's native theme layer and probably just do something really basic so the editors can see their posts being added, but strip out all the related links and everything else. And so they can at least see it, so they can interact with it at a draft level. And then just the live version would be pushed to the API. It's a good question. At this point, no. Down the road, I think we'll have to, but at this point, not right now, no.
So, I might just not know what Storybook and things are, but so what do the journalists or the editors see when they're working on the site? Is it the JavaScript part of it? when you're entering the content?
No, okay, so what our editors see, let's do this. If I can get, I'm not mirrored, so forgive me. So we'll do, I'll go into this one. So all of our editors add their content still into the Drupal site.
Okay.
Yeah, so because that front end that we built for that admin layer, it never launched because the API behind it wasn't ever in a place where it was viable. So, but yeah, so you see here, so this is our site here. So if I go into let me find a story. It's been a while since this database has been updated. Look at this story. You can see all the different content types we have. Main one's story, but if I go into this one, you can probably start to get the idea of like what kind of content we collect from editors. Because this story content type is intense as we go through it. So I mean, yeah, like titles, alternate titles for searches, teasers, images. You have your body here. Is it still loading? Otherwise, there should be a WYSIWYG popping up. But, and then we get into our tabs. So this is where you can attach audio, video. I think I need to do a cache clear on this environment. Authors, so on. So we always attach programs to things. We have a lot of tagging, so you can see categories. Read stories. So we have a lot going on. Social posts, so you can send messages to our social flow via RSS feeds that automatically populate social flow. So that would be, so our social media journalists can then post things pretty quick and edit these that go to them. Dates, yeah, stuff like that. So it's a lot going on there.
Have you moved all those views-based RSS feeds into something that uses your API?
Not yet. I'm hoping to do that soon, sooner rather than later. Because if I popped up our new relic, you would see our large transactions are these RSS feeds that keep loading over and over and over and over. But we have long cache times on a lot of them, and caching. So, yeah.
So you guys have discussions on your posts, is that right? Is there discussions on the stories?
Yeah, so, we do have commenting. We right now use the Gigya module. So Gigya is like a social media auth login layer that goes through. So you'd sign in with your social account, you get ability to log in, and they have a commenting platform that comes with it. And it kind of loosely hooks into Drupal's, it's right here. So it's just kind of like JavaScript on top of the site that handles our comments.
So you're not managing
No.
users at all?
Not really, no. So yeah, so like if you look at our traffic from logged in versus not logged in, the majority of our traffic is logged out, up in like the 90%. So
is there a way in your React on the homepage to know if the user is logged in?
There are hooks that we can provide from the API, because that would be registered in the API, but we're actually kind of moving away from Gigya a little bit, and we're trying to use this as a clean break away from that platform. But yeah, so we didn't really deal with the registered users here, because there's not anything they can do when they're registered on the homepage.
Right.
So,
I was meaning
yeah.
When they're logged into Drupal.
When they're logged in Drupal, yeah, because Drupal tracks whether you're logged in or not. They add a class to the body that you can tell and things like that.
React app, your React knows.
Yep. Yep. Basically, any data that Drupal provides, you can make available to the RESTful API to then use as you want on the website. Although now with GDPR, You can't do anything, which is a good thing. As a web consumer, I like GDPR. As someone that maintains an editorial news website, I mean, we had to like anonymize our Google Analytics traffic because we can't store the address. So now we can't really tell between new and returning visitors, stuff like that. So those are the trade-offs you get. But we're doing that. So that's that. I suppose
There's a service, Cookie Bot. They actually do this for you, management of whatever is required.
fortunately we don't use too many cookies, so we're all right. So yeah, so this is the site in React. I can make it. Oops. This is what I get for dragging on screen. So you can see it's responsive. Stuff like that. So a little more detail. Yeah. There we go. CSS grid, so we can bring the sidebar panels in after the first card there. Stuff like that. Yeah. So, any other questions? If not, it's an early lunch. So you're welcome for that.